There is a stone. It shouldn't be there. It weighs nearly 200 pounds, was pulled from the Minnesota earth by a farmer's plow in 1898, and it is covered in runes. Not Viking runes, not Norse, but something else older, stranger, and impossibly out of place. It tells a story of death, hardship, and a journey across an ocean. The date etched into its face is 1362. That's 130 years before Columbus ever saw the sea breeze of the Caribbean. So what if this isn't a hoax? What if the secret brotherhood, known as the Knights Templar, came to America first? It's a question that sounds more like a movie plot than a history lesson, doesn't it? Yet the deeper you look, the less fictional it becomes. The whispers begin to align, the puzzle pieces seem to shape into something familiar and unsettling. So breathe slow, sink in. Because what comes next may just shift the ground beneath your understanding of the past. History, you'll find, is often less a series of facts and more a delicate arrangement of silences, stories left untold or gently swept into the corners of collective memory. Sometimes those silences are accidents. Other times they are deliberate, intentional, created to conceal, to protect, to hide something powerful or dangerous. Tonight, we venture into one of the strangest silences of all. One that stretches back through royal courts, crusader battles, church betrayals, and whispered oaths carried across dark waters. It begins in medieval France with the rise of the Knights Templar, a brotherhood of warrior monks, guardians of sacred secrets, and bankers to kings. Their rise was swift, their wealth unfathomable. Their loyalty, it seemed, was to no one but themselves, and that, according to history, was their undoing. In the year 1307, on a single October dawn, the Templars were arrested en masse by order of King Philip IV, tortured, executed, burned. Their order shattered, their name disgraced, their treasures never found. But here's where it all gets quiet. Too quiet. Because despite the mass arrests, many of the highest-ranking Templars simply vanished, gone without a trace. No trials, no confessions, no bodies. Some say they fled to Scotland, protected by clans loyal to their cause. Others claim they crossed the seas, taking with them sacred relics, encoded knowledge, and ancient maps. But one theory, long dismissed, now gaining traction, claims they went farther still, across the Atlantic, to a land untouched by European maps, a place spoken of in secret navigation logs, hinted at in stone carvings embedded in symbols that keep reappearing where they shouldn't. A stone tower in Rhode Island built with old-world technique. A hidden carving of a knight in Massachusetts. Grave markers adorned with a peculiar cross. And yes, an enormous stone in Minnesota, covered in runes describing the deaths of Templar knights exploring the interior of a continent no European was meant to have seen. These are not isolated oddities. They form a pattern, one that stretches from Scotland's Roslin Chapel to Canada's Oak Island, to weathered tombstones in dusty New England graveyards. A pattern that raises one chilling, magnetic question. What if the Knights Templar discovered America and left behind a trail we've spent centuries ignoring? You'll hear voices say it's nonsense, a fringe theory, pseudo-history wrapped in romance. And maybe it is. Maybe. But for every eye roll, there's a symbol carved in granite. For every scoff, a forgotten manuscript, a whispered legend, a clue half buried in soil and snow. And for those willing to look deeper, to listen carefully, the story begins to emerge. A story of secrecy, of survival, of exploration. One that suggests the collapse of the Templars was not an ending, but a transformation. one that leads westward into lands unknown through storms and silence, until it finds a second beginning on foreign shores. And so as you lie back and listen, let the noise of the modern world fade. Imagine sails cracking in the wind, stone towers rising where no towers should stand. Imagine secrets carried across oceans in ships that have long since rotted into the sea floor, and whispers that never quite disappeared. Because some stones speak louder than history allows. Before we venture further into the shadows, take a moment to subscribe so you never miss a secret that history has tried to forget. You've probably heard their name before, echoing in the back of documentaries, whispered in novels, shouted in conspiracy forums. The Knights Templar. In most modern imaginations, they exist somewhere between Indiana Jones and medieval shock troops cloaked in white robes marked by a red cross, standing silently in the background of someone else's legend. But long before they became the patron saints of historical speculation, they were very real, very wealthy, and very dangerous. They were founded in 1119 in the aftermath of the First Crusade. At that time, Jerusalem was under Christian control, and pilgrims from Europe were flooding into the Holy Land. These pilgrims weren't exactly battle-hardened. Most were poor, unarmed, and entirely vulnerable. The roads were filled with bandits, deserters, and political traps. So a small group of knights, 9 to be exact, proposed something radical. They would form a monastic order devoted not to quiet contemplation or farming, but to armed escort. Warrior monks, a paradox in armor. The church approved, slowly at first. But then came the Templars' secret weapon branding. That blood-red cross on a stark white mantle wasn't just a fashion statement. It became a symbol of absolute religious devotion, of fearlessness in the face of death. Donations began to pour in. Nobles handed over castles. Kings handed over coin. The Pope handed over something more valuable than gold exemption. The Templars answered to no king, no bishop, no local authority. They were accountable only to the Pope. Spiritually elite, militarily efficient, and legally untouchable. By the mid-12th century, they were operating across Europe and the Middle East. They had their own fleet, their own treasury, their own banking system. A Templar letter of credit could be cashed from Portugal to Palestine. In effect,